Hi everybody, welcome to AI TV. We're broadcasting live from AI Expo Africa 2020 online. Our online edition, because of COVID this year, we took our conference virtual, and our media center and AI TV is also virtual. We're using Zoom. One of the upsides of our online conference this year has been able to reach so many new people around the world. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome Fanie Botha, who's the Chief Operating Officer of Firtech Intelligent Automation. Welcome, Fanie, to AI TV and AI Expo. How are you doing?
Hi, Nick. Thanks for having me, and hi to the listeners. Doing really well on this beautiful spring day.
Yeah, it actually currently looks like you're sitting orbiting a planet Earth there from 400 miles up in the atmosphere, but obviously you're in Joburg and in your office there. So, Fanie, tell us a little bit about Firtech. I spoke to Yugan, the CEO, early on, and we basically had a conversation around the fact that you're involved in the RPA space. But just tell us a little bit more about some of the customer types and some of the kinds of projects that you guys are involved in.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. So as Yugan would have told you, Firtech stands for Fourth Industrial Revolution Technologies. And essentially, that's the operating space that we try to be in. So some people say that we just never outgrew the toys, but we see this as the future. And this includes anything from drones to IoT and robotic process automation, including artificial intelligence and the applications thereof in modern business.
So I think, you know, for people watching the channel or people watching this video, if it's embedded on your own website, I mean, clearly you guys have been working with some pretty significant clients with your service offerings. Talk us through an example of a large RPA project that you guys have got involved in, and tell us a little bit about the problem that the client had and how you went about solving it, and some of the nuances of a deployment at that sort of scale.
Sure. Thanks, Nick. Yes, so I mean, this is also the AI TV channel, so there's a very nice AI angle to this, and of course RPA is a key focus for us, so it features in the story as well. And I think one of the interesting things is having come to a lot of previous AI conferences, there was a large theme around developers and AI enthusiasts trying to understand AI from first principles and coding it from first principles. And there will still be a lot of that going forward. But what we've also seen happen is from the major vendors producing off-the-shelf AI products. So essentially services that you can consume. And these include various things like handwriting recognition, intelligent character recognition, and then obviously all of the other computer vision and prediction type AIs that you would have dealt with previously. Now, RPA on its own has been a very powerful up-and-coming technology in terms of automating very repetitive back office operations, especially starting in the office of the CFO often, but then extending to other administrative functions where you can find those tasks that humans these days really don't need to be executing anymore, because they are so rule-based and they are so repetitive that those humans are better spent using their creativity and let a robot process take care of the repetitive stuff. Now, the interesting thing is in recent times where the fields of AI and RPA started to intersect. And one of these very interesting use cases we are seeing is in the field of document understanding. So if you don't mind, I'd really like to tell you about a use case that we recently came across and that we're busy with in the public sector.
Yeah, please do.
So one of the ironic kind of situations that we find ourselves in is that we are in a more digital era than we've been ever before. Yet, in a lot of places, we seem to gravitate back to paper. Now, this use case is in public sector, but it's certainly not a thing just about public sector or government processes that seem to still like paper. The private sector and on every level, it seems we like paper. Now, the ironic bit is even if you get a human to fill in a document, these days, the endpoints for all of those documents ends up being in some kind of a computer system. And in previous years, we've had these multifunction device scanners, and a lot of people said, if I scan my documents, then I'm digitizing my content in my business because now they're PDFs. But the reality is you've just got essentially paper that you can store on a hard disk as opposed to in a box in your back room. It's no closer to being entered into that computer system or that system of record that you wanted to take an effect in, whether that's a enterprise resource planning system, whether that's a database of people with their identities, etc. So now, with the RPA being fully capable of taking PDFs from different locations, such as FTP servers, email inboxes, or any kind of database really, and this RPA being able to interact now with these AI models that can perform optical character recognition, but more importantly, intelligent character recognition and handwriting recognition, it starts to open up a field where the moment that you still have to enter a form manually with your pen and ink, there's no reason why that form couldn't be completely and to a very high level of accuracy digitized within the next 5 to 10 minutes after it went through a scanner. And in this specific use case, we are looking at up to 12 million handwritten forms, and to be able to digitize those using a combination of RPA with document understanding and AI. And not only is this speeding up the process that you would have had to do by using humans, but you also dramatically drive down the error rate. And the people that would have been those data capturers can now only manage by exception. So where a specific digitization event came back with a low level of confidence, you can route those to humans to review those specific cases and just correct 1 or 2 characters.
Yeah.
And we're really seeing this as a game changer.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think any organization that believes that you still don't need a human in the loop, particularly for, as you say, when it comes to processing stuff that's sort of like documentation that's had an element of human origination, so a signature, and then it requires some sort of processing. You need, for the exceptions, you need that human in the loop to maybe do secondary verification, particularly maybe if it's a claim for insurance or something like that, and for it to throw up the anomalies that need that human interaction. When you said 12, did you say 12 million documents?
Yes.
And was that 12 million as a sort of legacy repository, or was this 12 million during a given time of active processing of information?
So this is a specific campaign that's being run by this institution, and this campaign seeks to get all of the potentially qualifiable entries into the campaign, but then to qualify out on very specific criteria in a very short space of time those that are not really the most ideal candidates for this specific process. Now, because it's such a time-sensitive process, and because the addressable potential candidates is a number of 12 million applicants, the committee that looks after this process really tried to open their minds around how they would attack this differently, because in all previous cases, similar institutions would have not even considered other digitization technologies. And so it's actually quite an interesting story of how the need for a different approach to technology came about. And it's simply the case that they were looking at a much shorter space of applications and also evaluation when they realized they would need in excess of 1,000 people to actually be the data capturers for this process. And when we started presenting the digitization technologies to them, the dramatic reduction in error rates came out as a almost unexpected benefit and a really nice surprise to also add to the list of of return on investments or kind of use case benefits.
So it's sort of like a high volume, short time period where a lot of information needed to be processed to make a decision. And obviously that's a great RPA AI case study. So Fanie, where do you see this technology heading? I mean, I think, most organizations, if you start looking at the banks and the insurers, started with RPA on a journey 3-4 years ago. But now they're getting to this point where they're wanting to augment other aspects of their processes with the AI. Are you seeing, this kind of forging of AI and RPA becoming more intertwined, more common? And you think more customers are going to ask for it?
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm of the belief that I'm much further along the adoption curve than a lot of millennials or young people that really want to be those early adopters. So speaking to me, you really have to convince me about some of the use cases of cutting edge technologies like AI, et cetera, et cetera. And an avid fan of all sci-fi movies, I've always chuckled at the kind of leaps and kind of projections that they've made for AI. Having said that, I'm astonished daily by the real practical use cases that AI is presenting for itself, both on its own as a technology standing alone, as well as in combination with things like robotic process automation. And where robotic process automation was very much just a rules-based desktop automation kind of tool in previous years, the use of AI opens it up to new fields such as process mining, process improvement, document understanding, test automation. And I mean, just recently, we've run a massive systems upgrade of a large enterprise system that would have previously taken a very tedious amount of repetitive testing. And it's not always very easy to apply something like robotic process automation there, because there's a level of heuristics or decision making involved there. But in this case, with the use of AI, we could quite easily breeze through a whole testing project with the use of RPA and robotic process automation.
Yeah, look, it's just a fascinating field. I mean, I was lucky enough to talk to Guy Kirkwood, who's the chief evangelist at UiPath, on one of the previous AI TV interviews, and his company has this vision of a robot for everybody. So you have a RPA robot helper, not just for the people at work, but also for every human to do the kinds of things that humans don't necessarily always like doing. Expense claims, shopping lists, whatever those things are. So I think we're living in fascinating times, Fanie. I just want to wrap up by saying, thank you for joining us on AI TV and showing us some of the real practicalities of the services and technologies that you are working with. And again, to say thank you for also supporting our event this year and taking a leap of faith into the world of online conferences. I know you guys had a fairly popular booth at the show, but I just want to say thank you for joining us on AI TV, and we hope to see you back next year.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you for the listeners and the viewers who tuned in today.